Sacho, you've seen this residents of Sacho coming to pay their last respect to the president. What does it really tell you?
Brenda, before I make a comment on that, I just want to convey my heartfelt condolence to the family of Mzee Moi and Kenya at large. This is truly a mourning moment for our country and our neighboring countries, and many people that in one way or the other felt the leadership of President Moi. And for that reason, I just want to express my sincere mourning period, even alongside the other Kenyans. A lot has been said about President Moi. Some of it I may not be able to really feel or even try to comprehend, because I was probably not in that time when there were a lot of issues in this country, perhaps as a child, so I didn't know much of it. But the country knows Moi better than our generation and probably your generation. And therefore, what we can say now is there are people that made so much in their life as a result of President Moi. There are people that Moi touched their life and it was never the same again. There are people that were teachers and became principals. They were principals and they became director of education. And they were director of education and became members of parliament as a result of Moi. There are also people that went to President Moi and they asked just to see President Moi, and they got their citizenship. Just like one gentleman here who is a renowned businessman now, an Indian businessman, who said he was teaching in Rift Valley, and Moi went to his school and asked him whether he was a citizen. And within days, he was called in and he was made a citizen of this country. And today is one of the, very, very great businessmen in this country, running a chemical industry. Mm-hmm. There are people that were in school and didn't have land for the school. And just by knowing Moi in one way or the other, they had big land and a big school and buses. There are churches that did not have land, and many churches in this country. And Moi, just by them reaching Moi and saying that there were pastors and they needed land, and it cut across, not just AIC where the president was going to church, but Catholics got land. We had other Protestants that got land. ACK got land, or Anglican Church as those days it would be called, and many other people. Mm-hmm. Now, if Moi touched their life and it was never the same again, mm-hmm. they will brave every possible impulses to come and give their last respect to President Moi. Mm-hmm. And I believe that's why these people are coming here. They're coming here we're seeing people coming from all walks of life and from all parts of this country to view his body. I don't think they're very well off. All of them are very well off to travel far distances to come here. I just think it's a sacrifice, because in one way or the other, wherever they came from, mm-hmm. Moi made a difference in their life. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, they think we need to pay our last respect to this gentleman. I've seen people who've come over there and have passed, fainted for that reason, and carried over. And we thank the emergency response team that is there, whether it is St. John's Ambulance or Red Cross. They've been able to do that. Some people do not believe that such a leader will be able to die one day. Right. They don't believe, and for that reason, seeing a man who exhumed such authority and power and led this country for many, many years, laying there motionless, that in itself is an emotional drain that, some people are not able to contain.
And I've seen also parents, going with their young children as young as 10 years, 11 years, 12 years, and some of them do not even know, who President Moi is. And then it means it's also a time for parents to go back home and educate, you know, their children in terms of just trying to tell them this was the second president of the Republic of Kenya. He's the one who led our nation, and probably even telling them stories about Maziwa ya Nyayo, something that so many Kenyans have talked about.
Photos have history. I remember there's a portrait that is going around where President Kenyatta was still alive. President Uhuru Kenyatta was a young boy, but in a suit. President Moi was in that photo, and President Kibaki was in that photo. Now you can imagine a photo, a one-clip photo, carrying the 4 presidents of Kenya, individuals that have become presidents of this country in one photo. Now, that's a golden opportunity. Can you imagine how much that photo would probably sell in the next 100 years? It's huge. And so I believe that some of these parents that are taking their kids there, remember that this thing is live. There are still photos and there are motion photos as well, you know, videos, and it will be kept in the archive one day. Who knows who that child will be one day? It might be the president of this country, and perhaps produce that photo and say, man, I didn't know what my dad was doing, but perhaps he was introducing me into the field of politics, and here I am, I'm the president of this country. No one knows, but psychologists actually tell us to be very, very careful about bringing kids to see, bodies of individuals that are passed on. With all due respect, sometimes it could be a nightmare. Sometimes they really don't understand. I've actually literally seen a gentleman there with a child that is less than 10. I know that kids more than 10 years are allowed to view the body, but I've seen people sneaked in there with kids that probably that kid must be less than even 5 or even there and about. I don't think that is proper, because kids sometimes are prone to reflect and, bring into imagery what they've seen. And if it's not very good, sometimes bothers them at night. I would refrain to have kids be taken to view the body of our president or any other body that is out there because of those many questions, but also just the mere fact that sometimes it interferes with the ability to comprehend the whole scenario of death, because kids really don't understand that. But I think it is a moment for that everybody wants to. I've seen Honorable Aluke saying, I have not viewed the body of Mzee, but because I'm waiting for my family so that we can go and view the body. Together. Some people think that that is a family respect also. As a team, they will come as a family and give their last respect to our departed president. And
this is such a trying moment, time and season, in short, for the family of the late Mzee Moi, and also a trying time also for Kenya, the East Africa community and Africa at large. And when I looked at President Uhuru Kenyatta being the first person to view the body of Mzee Moi on Saturday, he stood there and I could see an emotional president, looking at a man who introduced him to politics, because you remember in 2002, Mzee Moi wanted the President Uhuru Kenyatta to run for presidency, but unfortunately he didn't win. It was, former President Mwai Kibaki who won,
For Uhuru Kenyatta, President Moi is like his father. His father in politics, but also a man who saw something in him that no one saw in this country. He gave him a job as a chairman, I think, of our tourism board or something like that for some times. And after that, he introduced him into politics. He nominated him as well, to a point where basically nobody knew Uhuru Kenyatta before then, other than being the son of the late President Kenyatta. But he nominated him and brought him into parliament. And when he was thinking of exiting power, he decided to look around him. The likes of the political heroes of those days were the likes of the late Saitoti. We had Honorable Mwai Kibaki. Those were people that many Kenyans thought will be able to succeed President Moi when he exits the political arena. Remember, I say when he exits the political arena, because again, if Moi wanted to continue being the president, he would not have left the political circles in 2002. And you remember that he held President Uhuru Kenyatta's hand and say, I've looked around and I think this is the guy who can lead. Well, it was never to be so in 2002. And again, looking at President Moi, people thought that he would not be able to hand over power. But he did. He handed over power to a candidate that was not necessarily his choice. His choice was President Uhuru Kenyatta. But he said, well, Kenyans have to move on. And for that reason, let's hand over power. And it was a peaceful transition. I can tell you that that is a day I went to Uhuru Park and I saw emotion that filled Uhuru Park. And the joy that President Moi was handing power, nobody believed it until the time it took place. That indeed he had handed over power and that he was living in a military chopper to be taken back to his home. But it happened. And therefore, after 10 years of Mwai Kibaki's rule, Uhuru comes into play and he becomes the president. He consulted with President Moi for a number of occasion, I believe. And I think being, President Moi Moi being known as a professor of politics, I believe if things became so thick and so difficult for President Uhuru Kenyatta, he ran to President Moi for advice because he's been here for 24 years. There's nothing he didn't know about this country. And remember that there's something about President Moi that everybody's talking about. He knew everybody and in every corner of this country. He knew all the pieces, all the paramount chiefs. He knew the political leaders. He knew them by name. And this is what will surprise you. Everybody you talk to that knew President Moi, they will tell you that he called them in person if you wanted to know anything from them.
Right.
And for that reason, it is a guy that knew the trenches of this country.
Right.
And he was just a brilliant advisor to President Uhuru.
And let's just head back to Parliament buildings where the family of Mzee Moi is currently being prayed for. And that prayer is being led by the clergy who has come with the residents, who have come rather with the residents from Sachu just to pay their last respect to Mzee Moi, whose body is lying in state at the Parliament building. So right there, what you're seeing are members of the family of the late President Daniel Toroitich arap Moi kneeling down, being prayed for. It is a time of prayer for the family of Mzee Moi, a time of consolation. It is a trying moment for them, not only for them, but also for the entire country at large. And so that is why residents of Sacho have come to Parliament building just to, console the family and pray for them. Later on from that, they'll be heading to Cabernet Gardens to also talk to Baringo Senator Gideon Moi. But just also to remind you, Kenyans from different walks of life, far and wide, are still coming to Nairobi County, lining up, as you can see on your screen, to pay their last respect to a man who has been described as a timekeeper, a humble leader, a man who knew every part of this country, has been told by a political analyst, Michael Agwanda. There they are, viewing the body of Daniel Toroitich arap Moi, but what you're seeing on the screen right now is the former Speaker of the National Assembly, Francis Ole Kaparo, right there, paying his last respect to Mzee Moi, whose body is lying in state. It has been lying in state at the Parliament buildings for the last 3 days. Today is the third day. It began on Saturday, led by President Uhuru Kenyatta being the first person and his deputy, William Ruto, being the first people to actually view the body of Mzee Moi. Yesterday was the second day. Today is the last day. Viewing of the body will end at exactly 5 p.m. So in case you want to pay your last respect to Mzee Moi, you need to make your way to Parliament buildings. All you need is your national identity card. That is the document that you will use, to get into Parliament buildings, just to pay your last respect to Mzee Moi before it is taken back to Lifindu home after 5 p.m. in preparation for tomorrow, a national celebration that will be attended by different dignitaries, including 10 head of states who have confirmed their attendance for tomorrow's national celebration that will be held at the Nyayo National Stadium. So far, roads leading towards Nyayo National Stadium have been closed. Hence the reason as to why Kenyans are witnessing or are stuck in traffic on different roads here in Nairobi County. Then on Wednesday, it will be the final journey of President Moi, who will be buried at his home in Kabarak. And right there, what you're seeing, live pictures, Kenyans making, viewing the body of Mzee Moi. Long queues have been, being witnessed within the Nairobi Central Business District. Our reporters in different locations within Parliament and also outside Parliament will be giving us more details. And Mr. Gwanda, many have described Mzee Moi as a man from a humble beginning. He was a teacher, then rose to a position within the ministerial position during, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta's tenure in office. Then he became a vice president, then became a president without a vice president for 14 years. Then it means he's a man who knew, his track on where he wanted to be in terms of politics.
I believe that leaders, and I am a Christian, so I believe in what the Bible says, that leaders are chosen by God. When you look at President Moi's tenure, the only thing he failed in, one of the things he failed in pretty good, was that he was not a very good hearts boy. That's what we're reading about him. That anytime he will be given a lot of cattle to go keep, and when he comes back home, a few will be lost and he didn't know where they were. And perhaps, as it's been written, that is the reason why he was sent to school, because he would perhaps do better in school than taking care of the cattle that he had. His leadership also is seen in the hands of missionaries that came to the Rift Valley those days, that mentored him, and was taken by missionary and taken to school and becoming a teacher. And after that, we were told that he was quite a disciplined individual, that he never drank, he never smoked. And actually, when you look at the Legco representative of Rift Valley then, that he took over from, is because the gentleman was smoking and drinking so badly that, when an election came, he trounced him so easily, because he was a teetotaler. He was just a good guy there. When he came to Parliament, he played his cards well. I believe that people thought he was an underdog, and hence the reason why he became vice president. And when the late President Kenyatta passed on, he was put in there. But remember, the deep state then thought, well, this would be a very easy ride for that reason. But he surprised them. He became such an individual that had serious mastery of politics, and politics then, that nobody was able to crack that puzzle for 24 years. And it surprised everybody, because of the deep state then, the people who were close to President Kenyatta thought that it was a walkover, that it would be very, very easy. What people are actually wondering about today is, how did he make it for 24 years? And how did he beat these intellectuals that were there? Remember that there were a lot of airlifts those days, and Rift Valley was not part of the airlift. A lot of airlifts happened in the western part of Kenya, mainly the Luo Nyanza area. We know that a lot of the airlifts also happened in central, area, and Nairobi area. That was not, it was not part of the elites, part of the well-educated individuals that went to America, and some of them to Europe to study, and came back and took the leadership. And it was not part of it, but he outwitted them. He was smarter than them in all ways for him to keep that leadership near him, and for a very, very long time.
And when you talk, and Mr. Gwanda, when you talk about President Moi being such a smart leader, and he also knew that it's time for me to exit the leadership of this country, take a back seat and leave a new generation to take over. We are seeing different heads of state, 10 of them have confirmed to be attending, this ceremony that will be held at the Nyayo National Stadium tomorrow. Some of them are still African presidents. And when you look at Mzee Moi's clip that we've been playing here at KTN News, him saying that, he said it in Swahili, but let me translate it in English. Let me paraphrase it. He said, the people who think that there's some African leaders who cannot leave leadership, some thought I cannot leave the presidency, but I'm here. I'm ready to leave this presidency. That time will come. And it came, and indeed, he handed over to President Uhuru Kenyatta. So these heads of state who are coming tomorrow, some of them are presidents. What does it really tell them? What can they really learn from the leadership of Mzee Moi?
I think the reason why I'm here today is not to say so much about a departed hero. But I'm here today also to disagree with many people that want to look at the president and say all manner of things that they think he did wrong. All human beings are to error. We do mistakes. But there are also a lot of good things that the president did. And that can be seen by the number of guests that are coming here tomorrow to mourn with us. And where I come from, once somebody passes on, you leave his fate with his maker. And you don't dwell on the evil or the bad things that perhaps might have happened in his lifetime. You say you've lived your life. We pray that your maker, your relationship with your maker was good enough to an extent where one day we'll be able to meet you in heaven. That to me is the most important thing. President Moi knew God. When you look at his life and what his pastors are saying, he never departed from the word. And when he said, when the word says that in 1 John 1:9, that if you confess your sin, is faithful and just to cleanse you and to cleanse you from all your unrighteousness, that to me is the most important thing. Are we able to reflect into our life and say, look, I know I've made mistakes, and I want to ask you to forgive me. And I also want to forgive you, those that perhaps hurt me in one way or the other. That's the best we can do as human beings.
And that is what even at some point he said, kama ulinikosea,
nimekusamea.
Na kama umenikosea, nimekusamea.
I wish we'll embrace that and look at the man and say, well, what are these beautiful things that he did? I think for, the exact question, why are all these leaders coming here? Remember, President Moi was an Africanist. He really wanted good for not only Kenya, but all our neighboring countries. President Moi protected this country from the military rule. And so I am here perhaps to say, look, I want to remember the good things that he did more than the bad things. Because let me tell you, at the end of the day, whether we mention the bad things or not, it doesn't really matter now. What matters now is the relationship between him and his creator. And if he's a Christian, we believe in life after that when you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. And for that reason, that's where I will want. And these presidents that are coming, whether past president, I know President Jakaya Kikwete is coming, and many other leaders that have led Africa will be coming to mourn with us and to send him off. I strongly believe that in one way or the other, he must have interacted with them. He must have talked to them one-on-one. He must have impressed on them positively. He must have really wanted a relationship beyond just Kenya with them. And for that reason, I think this is the leader that we need to go and give a warm send-up. But then it's also African. We've seen Africans have had great relationship with Kenya, and therefore, if something like that happens, we saw what happened when the late Vice President Wamalwa Kijana passed on. We had a lot of leaders that came into this country. Remember, Kenya has probably been visited by the world over in terms of leadership. We had President Obama visit us and many, many other leaders that have visited this country. Those presidents and prime ministers and those dignitaries who have come here have loved Kenya. Kenya are very hospitable people. And for that reason, I think it befits he, as a leader, as our president, it befits the honor of having these regional leaders who come and give him a warm send-off.
All right. And as we continue with Mr. Michael Agwanda, political analyst, later on, let me just cruise back live to Parliament and talk to our Swahili anchor, Zubeda Kananu, who's with the family members of the late Mzee